Today, we are going to run through the essential gear for running an ultra marathon. This is for 50 kilometers and 100 Ks. We're going to go over the shoes, we're going to go over the pants, the shirts, the vests, the everything, you name it. Let's dive in and get started. Alrighty, essential ultra gear. Here's what we are going to cover today. Shoes, running vests, clothing, shirts, shorts, underwear, socks, safety gear, rain gear, headlamps, neck warmers, caps, hats, sunglasses, bonus tips, all of the things, okay, to help you go ultra. Warning, this is the most important video in the entire course. Watch the entire video, be present, don't fast forward. Pro tip, watch on 2x speed so you can download all of these essential ultra gear tips in the fastest way possible. Right, let's dive straight into shoes. What's going on with shoes? When selecting your shoes, comfort first. You're about to spend 4 to 6 plus hours per week in these. Comfort first, then try and optimize from there. Okay, so comfort first, and on race day, if you're doing a 50K or 100K, you might be going for 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, could be a little bit more. Comfort is your number one priority to optimize for. Next, the drop. This is the distance between the height of the heel and the toe of the shoe. Big drop equals big heel impacts. This has a significant impact on your running economy. Okay, so drop, I'm going to show you a visual very soon around what that means when we are choosing a shoe for trail running or ultra marathons. And essentially the drop is the distance between the height at the back of the shoe and the height at the front of the shoe, okay? And that is the drop. Now the reason why they hypothesize this is that it puts your foot in a forward leaning position, so it makes you feel like you are falling in your body, trying to encourage you to run faster and easier, okay? Couple of things. One, I mentioned big heel impacts, okay? So when that drops like that, often because the body's upright, and if we don't understand the right running technique, we end up striding out and using that heel drop as a landing pad and an impact source, which then adds another moment to our running motion, which can decrease our running economy, okay? So when we're going long, we're not always about speed, okay? We're not like a sprinter in the blocks trying to get out and go real fast. We're actually really consistent and looking to go the distance. So if you are choosing an ultra shoe, I recommend trying to minimize the drop as much as possible, okay? And if you're looking for the thing that's most important, you go back to step number 1, which is comfort first, okay? Drop. Here is an example, right, of a website, Ultra. You can go to their website. Here's some trail running shoes that I found, Men's Experience Wild. I don't know what these are like, not affiliated with Ultra in any way. You can find the drop information down the bottom here where it says heel toe drop 4 millimeters. Okay, and that is the information that you want to understand right here as to how much drop is in this shoe or the shoes you're looking at, okay? And you can ask the shoe shop, if you're at a shop, what that is for you. So here's another visual example. I've pulled out that shoe. Essentially, if you'd imagine the foot, you know, there's a bed in here. This is probably a little bit high because I don't know what the inside of the shoe looks like, but this is an example of how they measure drop. Okay, so that's the top, that's the bit at the heel, and then this is the part at the toe or the lower point, and the gap between that is what they said is about 4 millimeters. Okay, it might not be from there, it might be measured from here to here, or it could be slightly from there to here. It just depends what's on the inside of that footbed. We can't see that from the outside, but you get the understanding of what this concept means. It's essentially telling you how much forward leaning or downward slope there is between the heel and the toe on the shoe. Okay, here's another example of drop, right? Ultra, another shoe from the same company. Now this is what we call a zero drop. And as you can see, that running through here, it's really flat in the sole of the shoe. It might be from that little yellow bit to this little front bit, maybe. Again, can't see without seeing inside the shoe, but this here is a zero drop model, and that is the difference between the drop in different types of shoes, if you're wondering what that means when selecting your shoe, okay? So, we've covered drop. Next one is stack height, okay? This is the thickness of the sole. It influences the stability of your foot on technical trails. The more technical, the lower stack height I would suggest, okay? So think about it like having a block of wood under your feet. If you try and run with a block of wood under your feet, right, and it gets really technical, slippery, tricky, tree roots, things like that, it's hard for your foot to respond to the earth beneath your feet if you have a really high stack height. So that's why I suggest if you are running very technical trails, have a lower stack height, because then you will be closer to the surface of the earth, you'll be more responsive, the sole of that shoe will be more malleable to actually grip the surface as well. And so we will explore what stack height looks like between some models right here. Okay, so here's a Vivo Barefoot. I feel like this is the Trail SG. And this is an example of a 2 to 5 millimeter stack height. I think it's somewhere in between. I looked it up on the website. So essentially, we're talking about probably, you know, this little bit of rubber here that's just sitting under the sole of that shoe, okay? So that's an example of a very low stack height shoe, and if you grab this shoe and you flex it and twist it, it'll be really malleable, right? Really grippy for varied terrain, varied trails. Here is the example of the Ultra. That's a Lone Peak 8, that model, and that's got a 25 millimeter stack height. Okay, so you can see here, there's 25 mils of rubber essentially underneath your foot to the surface of the ground. So if you're running over really like gnarly, sharp, rocky stuff, this could be very beneficial. So it's always about the context of where you're running, what your race is, as to which factors you need to consider for choosing your shoe. And this here is a Hoka, I can't remember the model, it might be a Speed Goat, but as you can see, there is a significant amount of stack height here, or rubber under your foot. So if you were to imagine you come into some really technical trails, it'd almost be like you're standing on, you know, high heels blocks underneath that foot, trying to adjust to the terrain as you go, okay? So this has 35 to 40 millimeters, which is pretty much double that and a lot more than that, okay? And that's kind of a spectrum of what stack height looks like when choosing your shoe for ultra running or trails. Alrighty, ultras. Here's some recommendations. These are some things that only I recommend, or say things about gear that I've personally used. Ultras, they are great for rock hopping and sharper gravel tracks. Wide toe box, 0 to very low drop, designed by trail runners for trail runners. I've found personally the Ultra Lone Peak 8 a very versatile shoe for when the tracks get a bit rougher, a bit gnarlier, and yep, they've got a bit of stack height and they're often 0 drop, and so it meets a few of those factors for me personally in terms of what I'm trying to achieve with my trail running. Their products are generally very good, I have found. What else have we got? Vivo Barefoot. I wear these, right? Ideally for daily wear and improving ankle strength. Scientifically proven to improve ankle strength by 60% after 3 months of wear. This is insane. If you try and find a scientifically backed statistical study from another shoe running company about the benefits of their shoes to reduce injury in runners, good luck. Okay, the industry average of runners getting injured is about 70% of people, and in all of the years of all of the technology, all we've seemed to have been able to do is propel runners faster by improving things now like carbon plates, but we're not actually solving some of the fundamentals like our technique and how we're running to actually really have a massive impact. And so just by wearing Vivo barefoot shoes on a daily basis, not even running in them, you can improve your ankle strength by 60%, which is massive gains for pretty much doing nothing other than changing your shoe choice. Not to mention increasing your proprioception, which is the fancy word for the sensor pad on the base of your foot, and all of the little sensors that fire every time you touch the ground. Sends information to the brain of positioning and movement so that your body knows how to keep propelling yourself forward. I've pushed the Vivos in trail running. It is a bit unique. If you are interested in learning more about that, feel free to send me a message. Always happy to chat about shoe choices. Otherwise, the Ultras are a great entry-level shoe for people looking to purchase their first trail running shoe and start with doing Ultras. Okay? Next, the Ultra Masterclass. If you have not heard about this already and you're not watching this within the Ultra Masterclass, it is a community for trail runners to understand how to go ultra. There is a classroom with hundreds of hours of content in here and an amazing community feed of all sorts of inspiring people from all around the world. You can dive in, plan your ultra marathon training in 3 simple steps. Everything you need to know about 50k and 100k ultra marathons. You can get this and sign up for free at school.com/skeletal freedom. Running vests. Your pack horse, essential for carrying gear, hydration, and fuel during training and events. Okay, this becomes your number one ally on the field to help you go further and faster. Without gear for the weather, you're in trouble. Without hydration, you're in trouble. And without carrying a whole lot of fuels in your jangly pockets or things like that, you're also probably in trouble. Okay, so running vests, they've become very popular and I'm a huge fan because they help us go further and faster for longer. Let's dive into the specifics, okay? Mandatory gear is required in most major races. You will need to be comfortable and train with this so that you have no surprises on race day, okay? So if you sign up for a 50k, 100k, even a bigger race, there will be a form that usually states this is the mandatory gear that you will be required to show us at race check-in, okay? And you can be disqualified if you don't carry that gear on course. These might be things like snake bandages if you're in Australia. This can be things like high visibility vests if there's road sections and you're running at night. This can be things like head torches, thermal blankets for emergencies, whistles, all sorts of things. We'll go through that in a little bit in the session. Yet, what I recommend is make sure that you get comfortable with that mandatory gear in your training and in your running vest, and ensure that that running vest has enough literage or volume or pockets or places to put the mandatory gear when you are looking at purchasing a vest for your training runs and for your ultra marathons. Training and racing, okay? Train like you race. As you know, the limits of carbohydrate storage in the body is about 2,000 calories or about 1.5 hours of moderate intensity exercise. This is why vests are key for carbohydrates, hydration, and gear. They help you go further, faster, for longer. Vest considerations. Comfort. Number one rule, comfort first. Body shape and size, not too tight, not too loose. Movement equals wasted energy. Body shape and size, there is a difference between males and females, so make sure you take that into consideration when trying on running vests. Don't be afraid to simulate either blowing up the water bottles that are in those vests when you're trying them on to simulate how it feels on your body. Okay, feel free to take in gear into a shop and pack it all and stuff it all into all the packs and the nooks and crannies to see how that sits and feels on your body. Another really good technique. Ensure it's not too tight and not too loose. Okay, we don't want it like suffocating us, but we don't want it jangling all around, because that movement essentially can create friction, annoyance, It can, cut you almost, because you've got a bit of weight in that vest. That constant friction can, create all sorts of challenges when you are running for a long, sustained period of time. Not to mention that things moving around is wasted energy and the body will have to compensate for that moving around whilst you are running. Adjustable straps. Chest straps are important as you'll need to adjust them as you consume fuel and fluids. So in most running vests, you will see there is straps across the front. These are important to take into consideration as to the simplicity of their design, how easy it is to adjust them, tighten and loosen them, because when you go through aid stations, you'll fill up your bottles and you'll probably need to expand the volume in your chest for it to be comfortable. And then as you start consuming, it gets smaller and you want to start tightening it up over those subsequent minutes, hours, so to bring it in tighter and for it to be comfortable as you're running. So the adjustability of those chest straps are really important. Also key areas, often vests will have shoulder strap adjustments and sometimes underneath the arms for around the back adjustments as well, which help pull the vest down and in. Okay, so those are things to consider when choosing the right running vest as well. Fluid carrying capacity. Light is fast. Okay, so when we're running ultras, we want to get to a state, over time we were experimenting with the gear, the fuels, the fluids, the things that we're taking, and in essence, the less we take with us, right? So, not being reductionist, but by carrying excess, we essentially just put more stress on the body over a sustained period of time, okay? Aid stations are usually every 20 kilometers, which for most people is about 2 to 4 hours. Dependent on your training level, this means you need enough storage for 500 mils to 2 liters of water. Water in the back slows you down. Always try and optimize for putting the weight forward in your vest. Okay, so quite often vests will have 2 500 ml bottles in the front, which are really helpful, really handy for mixing the right fluid amounts, the right electrolyte mixes, and they might often have a clip at the back or a slot that you can then put, say, a 2 liter bladder for more water if you have a longer distance between aid stations, or you might have hotter, drier conditions, so you have an increased need for hydration whilst on your ultra. So those are all factors to consider when choosing the right vest. And water in the back, I've found when I tested this, I thought, oh great, I'll carry my 2 liter in the back and I have a liter in the front, and then I'll be invincible, I'll be able to run 40 Ks in one stint sort of thing. Yes, you can, but when you load up the back, it actually pulls your angle of momentum back and it slows down your running momentum, because running is a gravity sport, falling forward. And so when we have the weight in the front, it actually helps us propel us forward and will help us get us to the finish line faster and easier. Storage volume. Dependent on mandatory gear requirements, the environment / the terrain you're traversing, and the distance between aid stations, it will impact the storage volume. A 4 to 5 litre vest is suitable for up to 100 kilometers or fast 100 milers. Okay, and there are different sizes. Often they're sort of in the smaller, what they describe as 4 to 5 litre range of running vests, and then they might go up to a 15 or a 20 litre. Okay, now mandatory gear requirements, if you are in a colder climate or a more alpine mountainous region, they might say you need to carry more mandatory gear. Might be long waterproof pants, could be long waterproof jacket, could be an extra fleece or something like that. All of those things will be factors you need to take into consideration of just actually how much space can I put these things in, and is this running vest enough for that race or the type of trails and distances that I'm going to be doing. The environment and the terrain, also a factor in that, because that can dictate how long between aid stations or how long your training runs might be. What else have we got? That's pretty much it for storage volume. Let's check out an example of a vest. This here is a Patagonia vest that I use. It's a 4-litre vest. And just running through some of those key points, there's shoulder straps here, for example. There's a little clip there, you just press the button. You can adjust that on either side. You've got space for water bottles on each side in that pocket, which is helpful. There's a little hook that keeps the head of the bottle up, which is very important, so they don't drop down when you start drinking the fluid. There are 2 front pockets here, which I find very useful for either cell phone, trail snacks, gels, things like that, keeping that weight forward and upright. The chest straps on this one are 2 cords like this, which seem to work fine. I've probably run quite a few thousand kilometers in this one. So obviously there's been a bit of wear and tear over time. I don't know if this is the most robust system, but it works, and the adjustment up and down as that vest is lightweight and quite mesh and quite breathable. It's quite useful. There's also extra tags here for poles and things like that if you're running with that. This big pocket that runs all the way around the back. There's a clip up the top there for 2 litres of water. And there's a zip pocket at the back, which I have a back photo here so you can see what that looks like. This little stash pocket's great. I usually put like my PLB in here. You have a thermal blanket. You might put your payment card and your ID in here. A secure pocket's really handy, and things don't jiggle around a lot up there because it's usually, again, if your technique's quite good, the upper body area is quite stable when you are running. And this here is a big pocket all the way around the back, and there's a pocket that goes all the way in the length of the back as well. It's quite a nifty design. And for instance, this is a 4-litre carrying storage capacity. And I've done 50Ks and up to 100 kilometers in this one. Racing, which is really useful. It's done 50Ks unassisted for about 11 hours as well. So you can pack a lot in this vest. Really versatile. So don't think that you need to jump to a 20-litre vest because they're quite big in the scheme of things. And I'd encourage you to think about how can you be more efficient with your packing and getting things tighter and smaller as you're going. We've got a bonus section at the end. I'll show you some insights into that in the bonuses. Join the team if you haven't already. Join the crew on Strava at strava.com/clubs/skeletal freedom. Join the club. Kudos for all. I love seeing all of the ultra runners from all around the world diving in, joining the team, contributing to the Ks, giving each other likes, checking out each other's progress, the things they're experimenting with. It is awesome. Clothing. Shorts. Go for moisture wicking fabrics. Shorts with built-in liners are fantastic, especially for males, as it's one less layer to worry about a friction issue with. High waist pockets are great storage for rubbish or fuel on shorter runs. So long pockets for your hands are actually like quite useless in a trail running short. And if they might even have zip up sides, again, useless, because if you put stuff in it, it jangles around and moves around. It'll be really annoying. Quite a few of the smarter trail running shorts nowadays sort of have a band section at the top that might have like little stash pockets or a zip stash. Really helpful. Okay, so really just check out those shorts, and I would recommend finding trail running specific ones because it will make a difference. Shirts. Merino lightweight long sleeves are great for training, super comfortable and hug the body. The goal is always to reduce friction risk. Don't wear your new race shirt for your race. Always train in the shirt you'll race in first, okay? This is often a classic one. When we sign into race day, they give you a brand new shirt and you go, woo, I want to wear my new shirt. But I just recommend against that because for whatever reason, it might irritate you. It might not sit with your vest right. It might be a bit shiny and it might move around. It might cause some sort of irritation that you haven't prepared for. So wear it afterwards and then train with it after that for maybe your next ultra if you still want to keep running. But yeah, it's always good practice not to wear your shiny new race shirt for your race. Underwear, merino for moisture wicking and hygiene is great and something that I recommend if you don't have liners in your shorts. Favorite short? My favorite short is the Patagonia Men's Strider Pro 5-inch. It has hip pockets, a zip pocket at the back for a phone, ID and cash card, fast drying, and I find that when purchasing trail shorts, I've purchased like one size up. So I'm usually a small and I usually purchase a medium. It just gives you a bit more flexibility between the legs and just a bit more spaciousness in the short, because when you are running long, if things get a little bit tight or a little bit sweaty or a little bit sticky, it can start to become a pain. So I usually opt for a size up is my recommendation to people. Socks. What have we got with socks? Socks are intimately linked with blisters as well. So toe socks, excellent if you have wide toe box shoes, keeping toes separate for balance and stability, okay? Giving those toes individual ability to control. Believe it or not, each of our toes are very important functions for when we are running, okay? Back in the day, in America, when they had slavery, they would cut off slaves' big toes. Why? Because it would stop them running away. So for instance, if our big toe is impaired or has to only move with our other toes, then we're actually limiting its ability to contribute to our foot's motion. Those big toes are our propulsion drive forward utensil of our foot, you could say, and if that's missing, we have no drive or propulsion forward. So toe socks are a great way to enable those individual elements to always be working across, varied terrain and trails. Toe socks are great to support that. Great with wide toe box shoes. If you have a narrower shoe, you might find there's not enough space. It's great with toe socks because it essentially creates a barrier between toes to help wick moisture away, which is a big factor in blister creation, and it actually physically separates them so they can't rub together. So those are some benefits that I have found with toe socks. Love them or hate them, try it out. Merino wool helps with moisture, temperature regulation, and odor control. So moisture and temperature are the two things that we're working with here to avoid blisters, okay? Hot spots, hot for a reason. That means friction. And blistering is essentially, when you take your foot out and it often looks like soft and mushy, that's often because there's moisture there as well. So if you get on top of those two things, it's a really big step in helping you go further and faster without blisters. Blisters, your number one tool to combat them is merino equals moisture wicking, and toe socks equals reduced friction between toes. Favorite brands, one of my favorite brands is Injinji. I don't know if I've spelled that right, but Injinji. They are my favorites and that I have found to be some of the most robust in the industry. So that is what I primarily use and buy today. Safety gear. Safety blanket, small, lightweight, and essential in emergencies, often mandatory as part of the mandatory gear. When you purchase these from like an outdoor shop, you can get them online as well. When you get them, they'll come in like a flat pack, get them out, roll them up real tight, put a rubber band around them, and it's a good way to reduce the size of that into like a little tube that can just go in your vest in a very simple, small compartment. Again, always optimizing to reduce the size of the things that we're carrying to make us lighter and faster. Personal locator beacon, PLB, great for solo runs, can help in emergencies. Okay, if I am going on a long run, often, it might be, hey, I'm going to go for a 30K run, and my friends are like, yo, you're crazy. I'm going for a training run. With that, I'll often take a personal locator beacon. It usually lives in my running vest, and that's for two reasons. One, if I get into trouble and I don't have cell phone reception, I know that I can get help with that. And two, which is possibly more important and probably a highly likely use case, is actually coming across someone else that's in trouble. And you both might find yourself in a tricky situation, or they might be in a dangerous state. I have actually triggered a PLB before through adventure motorbike riding once, and we got the helicopter in because we were in a remote place, and one of the guys that was traveling with us had broken his leg, and we actually decided not to press the button, and we rode out to get cell phone reception, and we actually bumped into another emergency situation. We got talking to this guy that was the helicopter rescue organizer, and he recommended that next time just press the button if you have no reception and you have a PLB on you, because often emergency services struggle to locate where people are in emergency situations, and if you push the PLB, it will escalate it to get the help that you need the fastest possible. Okay, so they are not to be pressed for nice situations or I'm a little bit tired situations, not at all. I'm saying in emergencies, if you yourself are immobile and in danger, or you come across someone else, they are a very useful tool that we have at our disposal in this modern age. Whistle, easy to carry, highly effective in search and rescue situations. I think there's a stat that most people that get into trouble are often found in their strife, like only within like a very close range of an actual trail, like something crazy, like maybe 1,000 meters. Like they're only ever very close to a trail. And so just the simplicity of a whistle, I usually have it attached to my vest right there so that it's close and easy to access. Can be a very effective tool to support any search and rescue efforts, to alert help, or people coming to find you as well. Cell phone, download offline maps or download Topo Map app for your area or region. I know there are many different apps out there. Make sure it's got that offline capability, and often when I'm running, if I've got a watch that has GPS tracking, things like that, I'll use that primarily and have my phone on flight mode, so that I'm saving that battery and anything like that for some times when I actually might need to look at a proper map or use a bit more juice to do something from a communications perspective. Okay. GPS watch, helpful for navigation. Always download maps beforehand. Again, if it's got these great features, make sure you have them installed on it. Don't be caught out by not having the map of the country or region or the place that you're running in, as you might need it one day. Rain jackets. Mandatory gear. Most ultra events to protect against rain, and a layer to keep warm. Okay, so a rain jacket is mandatory gear at most ultra marathon events. Number one, to protect against rain. That keeps your core body temperature higher, right? And a layer to keep warm. So a light shell is a great way to enable you to be in cooler climates, as it essentially acts as a little bit of a wind barrier and a weather barrier. So it's actually an effective warming layer as well. Seam sealed. This is critical for warmth and waterproofing and stipulated in most mandatory gear requirements. I'll show you some photos of the difference between seam sealed. It's often difficult to understand. It is very important. It seems a bit nitpicky. I do know, especially here in New Zealand, well, essentially exposure is your number one killer in the environment, and having seam sealed gear is really important to keep the moisture out and to keep the heat in, to keep you warmer, and it will really help if you are in trouble. Okay. My jacket of choice is a Patagonia Storm Racer. It has double front access to allow the use of bottles easily when it's wet. Plus, it's able to flexibly control temperature if in and out of showers or forest or no forest. Okay, so often, you know, we're running along and like some showers will start up and I'll be like, all right, showers are here. And because, you know, when you choose this jacket, like if it's got like some vents, they might be underarm vents, or it might have like some sort of venting system in the front. If you can optimize for that, it's really helpful because you can just put that jacket on, open up the vents and still keep running. So you're staying dry, but not needing to like take it on and off as much, because if it gets heavier, great, you dome it up and you're dry. Or if it stops raining a little bit, you can just open it up and not have to take time to take your jacket off, put it away, get it comfy again, And so it's just a way to reduce movement, and taking stuff on, putting stuff off. It's always a pain, right? That's what the one I wear looks like. I think the new model actually just has a single front zip, so that's interesting. They might have received some product feedback on it, but what you can do is essentially zip this down halfway, zip that down halfway, and then you tuck that on the inside, and then your bottles are right there to consume, which is really useful for when, it might be a little bit misty or a little bit rainy, and you don't want the full jacket, but you don't want to get too hot. It's helpful, I've found. I know there's a lot of models of jackets out there. Another factor to consider is how small does that jacket pack down, okay? In the top of this one, for instance, there's a little stuff sack in the hood where you stuff it all in. More times than not, you probably won't be wearing your jacket whilst running, depending on what climate or country you're in. So always consider how well that packs down. Often with my jacket, I actually just roll it up and push it around the outside tube storage in my vest, which is very useful, but take into consideration how small and tight that packs down. Seam sealed. This is an example of not seam sealed. So if you've got a jacket and you're wondering before a race or in your training, or you're in a shop looking to purchase it, feel free to open it up and have a look, okay? See if it is seam sealed. That is just obviously the stitching, and what happens is the water will run down, hit the stitching, and just go straight into your clothing, get you soaked from the inside, and then that's not a very fun time. This is an example of seam sealed, okay? So as you can see, there's essentially tape that they put over the seams, and that keeps the moisture out, which is the aim of the game with a shell rain jacket. Headlamp. USB rechargeable, super useful, okay? Although mandatory gear on most trail runs requires quote unquote spare batteries, make sure you check if the model you are looking at has actual AAA batteries in it or a custom manufacturer specific battery, okay? Most of them these days are USB rechargeable, okay, which is great. When you go to purchase them, make sure you check if it is USB rechargeable and inside of it, it's got actually 3 AAA batteries, or they might have a specific manufacturer specific battery. The reason why I say that is because if you're at the shop and you're purchasing the new headlamp and it's got a manufacturer specific battery, make sure you order a spare one right then and there when you make the purchase, or if you're doing that online, so that you've got it, okay? Or else when you go for mandatory gear, if you've got a battery that doesn't match, or you might actually need it if you're running through the night because your torch might only last half the night, you won't have spare batteries or the ability to recharge it whilst you are running. Okay, so super important consideration when purchasing your headlamp for the trails. Lumens. Bigger the number equals bigger the brightness. You will need to balance brightness and charge time. Ensure your headlamp has different intensity settings. So know the context of your race, your run. Talk to a coach, talk to me. Feel free to book a free 30-minute training plan review call with me. And if you want to talk about details like this, either how long is it going to take me based on my running experience, and then will I need to consider things like this in the night? Okay. In each headlamp, if it's a good brand, it'll have a little chart in it that'll tell you, hey, at this setting, it'll last 3 hours. At this setting, it'll last 6 hours. At this setting, it'll last 9 hours. And this is context specific to what you're looking to achieve. It will help you with the top point about understanding USB rechargeable, needing spare batteries, maybe putting those spare batteries at your drop bag at an aid station, or things like that, okay? Brighter equals faster. This is a really simple point, which I learned the hard way. When I first started training for my first ultra marathon, I started to need to train a little bit earlier before work, and I just had a really old crappy head torch that I think I had for sailing or something. And with that, I started running in the mornings, and it was just a cheapie. It was like $20 one or something like that. Just had a couple of batteries and I was like, yeah, sweet, I got a head torch, and I'll run and I'll do this like the same loop, right, each week. And then it started breaking or something, and I taped it up and I was like, it'll be good. And then I was like, I probably need a proper head torch. And so researched a few, purchased a proper one, went for a run with my proper head torch, and I went way faster. Okay, so there's like my synthesis of this is when the body can see better, it can move more efficiently over the terrain. When it can't see very well, yeah, it's more cautious and slower, and it takes more energy to traverse. So brighter equals faster. Obviously, you've got a time battery storage trade-off for your specific head torch, the context of your run, and how long you're running for. So brighter does equal faster from my experience. Another factor to consider when running and training. Pacers. Make sure your pacer has spare batteries and has charged their torch too. Okay, so I was talking to someone the other day and they were like, everything was going great until my pacer, his head torch in the night, actually ran out of batteries, and then I was wasted and needed to help him navigate when he was really needing there to like help keep me going faster. So it became a very difficult situation for that person. Often pacers are supporting people at night or in harder times of races, which often coincide with the evening. Make sure your pacer has spare batteries too, and has charged their head torch as well. Seems simple and silly, but this is a real life situation that I heard about, which I don't want you to be in as well. My headlight of choice, I've been using the Phoenix HL18RT 500 Lumen for the last, 2 years. Seems pretty nifty, pretty useful. That's what it looks like. Not affiliated with Phoenix in any way. It's got like a BOA do-up system. It's pretty good. Stays on my head. It's relatively grippy. It's got an adjustable like direction up and down. Also useful for running technique. I'll explain that in other modules. And it's got various settings, so you can use the main one, you can use the two side ones, which again, based on time of night, time of day, really help you be able to A, either extend your battery life, B, run with the right light. Like you might not always want super bright light if it's like a really basic gravel track that's really wide and really flat, and you actually just want to rest your eyes a little bit. It's also useful to have those different levels of intensity for the light. And it's got red lights and all of that stuff as well. It's got a little battery indicator on the front of it, which is helpful. And you can easily pop the back open, and it just takes 3 AAA batteries, so you can swap those in and out. Relatively easy as well. So that's a useful headlamp that I've found, and would love to hear if you've got any other headlamp recommendations. Always interested in new gear or great tools that really support people to run ultra marathons super well. Neck warmers. We are going through the whole foray today. What do we got for neck warmers? Super versatile. Can be used as a sweat wiper, gloves, or neck warmer. Yep, you heard that one. Gloves. Very sneaky little trick that I picked up on, and I'll show you how I use that. Lightweight warmth. They are very handy for keeping warm during cold mornings. Pretty much one of my number one favorites. In using a neck warmer, right? I call it the cork in the bottle effect. If you combine a shell jacket, which is often mandatory gear anyway, plus a neck warmer, equals massive combo for minimal weight. Okay, so these are actually almost 2 like whole body warming tools. And you know, this is my buff tube, which is a neck warmer, right? Even though it's really thin and light, when you put this on fully, right, if you tuck that in there, and if you do up, say this is my wet weather jacket, that's like the cork in the bottle, and the amount of like temperature that adds is significant to the body. And as you know, they're super versatile in how else you can cover the ears, cover the head, things like that. Tuck it over your running cap. Super, super useful and versatile, I have found. Lightweight versus heavyweight. So this one often there's like the really thin weight ones, They're very versatile for cold and for warm, also sun protection. It's always context specific when you're running, what times of day you're running, night, daytime, altitude, all of those things. So take that into consideration through different phases throughout your race and your training. Pro tip, double buff versus gloves plus buff. It's all about versatility. Okay, so a little trick, take 2 buffs with you instead of taking 1 buff and a pair of gloves. Why? Because it's about versatility, right? And so if I have a buff, 1 buff on this wrist, right? So you can essentially put a buff over your wrist, right? Like this, and then you fold it in half like a figure 8. Then you've got your sweat wiper, right? Then I can just cover it over like that, and I've got a makeshift glove, okay? So if I have 1 buff and a second buff, then essentially I've got 2 gloves. I've got more sun protection if I need it, and I can put it on my neck, and I've got double sweat wipers as well. So really powerful trick. Double buff versus gloves is one that I've found very useful. Here's an example, me getting ready for the UTA 50. I've got a thick neck warmer on there. So it was actually real cold at the start of this race, but it was in Australia, and in the Blue Mountains it's really misty in the mornings, and then it's like fog and this cloud lifts out of the valley. So I can't remember the temperatures, but it might have gone from like 5 degrees up to maybe 25 degrees in the afternoon. So I actually started, everyone was like huddled around like warm heaters in the start corral. Thick buff on the neck, which I just tucked in my vest later on in the day, and then I had a buff on each wrist for sweat and for gloves in the morning because it was a little bit cold for probably the first hour or 2, which is quite a long time, and you do use energy to keep warm as well, so it's definitely something to consider. So I went for the t-shirt, thick neck buff to keep you really warm here, and then 2 hand gloves instead of taking a long sleeve and then having to take that off and vest off and all of that sort of stuff. So I found that to be a more versatile solution when running ultras. Caps, hats, and sunglasses. Let's dive in. Protection. Caps help with sun protection and sweat wicking. Okay, so the number 1 defense against sunburn is to be covered. Okay, so they say slip, slop, slap, wrap. If you're just covered from the sun and it can't get in, I find that a way better solution than trying to plaster sunblock and slippery, and you're trying to like open gels and you're in your mouth and you sweat and it's dripping in your eyes, things like that. Just get a good cap, okay? Environment matters. Sunglasses are optional but useful in exposed environments, okay? So with sunglasses, they're not on mandatory gear lists. It's really personal preference. You have to think about, if you take them, you've got to carry them for whatever distance you're going. So you've got to put them somewhere as well. Often I find I just tuck the frame arm in my pocket of my vest and it just sort of sits out the front. But I really consider, do I actually need these? Is my cap just enough? How sheltered is the trail? If you're doing like predominantly like forest trail running, it's usually quite shaded in forests. Or if you are in a really exposed environment, which might be snow, which could be mountainous alpine, it could be coastal, where there's like glare off the water, things like that, then that's the context is that you might want to think about sunglasses for. Prevent fogging. Make sure your sunglasses allow air circulation to prevent fogging, right? In ultras and trail running, we go up hills. Okay, this is usually an elevated intensity period where we sweat quite a bit, and if your sunglasses are too tight on your brow, or they come too close, or they might be too close around your chin, your cheekbones, this can be a recipe for disaster in that they fog up really fast, and then you're trying to wipe them clean with your sweaty buff, and it's a disaster, okay? So make sure when you're trying them on or testing them that there is a clear like airflow area around the lens so that it reduces the chance of them fogging up, okay? Pro tip number 1, polychromatic lenses allow you to go between sun and shade effortlessly. So I stole this from cyclists, okay? So there's this type of plastic lens that's called polychromatic. That means that it transitions from dark to light as the light changes around you. So I can be running through a forest and they're clear and I can see. I can pop out into like a little like clearing, which might only be for like a K, right? And it's really sunny and the lenses will go dark all by themselves. Really amazing. Then you might pop back into a forest section and it's shady and they'll go clear and you can see. Super, super powerful tool. Beats, taking sunglasses on and off. Again, it's just another way to increase versatility, increase simplicity in your running and your trails, okay? Pro tip number 2. Place your sunglasses on top of your hat when going up hills to prevent fogging, okay? If you've got a peak hat, take those sunglasses off when the hill comes up and just put them on the top of it. And in doing that, it will be a great way for the glasses not to get fogged up. That's a tool I've found very useful when hitting hills and training and on trails, especially in summertime as well. When you kind of want the sunnies and then you don't want them to get fogged up. Here are some examples of me in the mountains and sunglasses and sun protection, caps, hats. Little cap, that one's quite useful. It's got like a mesh panel system on it, so lightweight, flimsy brim, not much sun protection, but it's good to keep your head warm on like cooler mornings or on hotter days. A little bit of protection. As you can see, these are the polychromatic glasses. They're in the sun, they're shaded out, okay? Now, as you can see here, they're a lot lighter and see-through because they're under the shade of the brim on this hat. Okay, big bucket hat. You can see my whole neck is in the shade as opposed to I'm a little bit exposed. It was late evening here. So that's a useful consideration, the neck, right? And then going one further, big fan of cap flaps or neck flaps on caps. This is one of my favorites to run in. And we were lapping this mountain behind us, and it was in, as you can see, sort of forested trees. So I didn't actually take my sunglasses, but I needed some sun protection for when we popped out on the tops and came down the bottom. So a really useful tool. And I actually, on that sunny day, I wore a very lightweight merino long sleeve rather than trying to lather up my arms in sunblock. Stay out of the sun is your number 1 tool to protect against the sun. So those are some examples. Bonus time. What do we got? Snap lock bags. So these are like little plastic bags that have little zip closed parts, okay? Great for organizing snacks and keeping gear dry. So normally they'll be in the like food section at your supermarket. They might come in bigger sizes. Really good if you have to take mandatory gear, which might be, could be some lightweight gloves, could be long length like polypropylene or merino base layers and top layers. We sweat when we're running ultras, and it could rain as well. And so if we just roll them up, put them in our back of our vest, but we don't keep them away from moisture, they'll accumulate moisture. And so it'll weigh you down and make you slower and probably harder and heavier to move. So a great tip is just to like roll those up really tight or pack them up really small, put a couple of rubber bands around them, and then put them in the snap lock sort of food sealy plastic bags, and then just roll those up, maybe a plastic band around them again, and then put them in your running vest, okay? Not only does it keep them dry, keeps them more lightweight, and you don't have to wash them with all your other gear in between runs if you don't use them. So a very helpful trick that I have found. Chafing, stay hydrated is an important tool to reduce chafing. Wear moisture wicking clothes to remove the moisture away from your body. And use Vaseline, or there's products such as one called nut butter, which I have used before. I usually carry just a little emergency little bottle of it in the back of my running vest, which is useful especially for blokes, and Yes, the other one, essentially chafing's result relates to friction between skin, which might be between legs as we're running, or moisture and then dry cycles and friction between legs. I'm not as much of a fan of, so often you'll see at aid stations people like dunking themselves with like big sponges of water because it's hot. It puts you at risk. Obviously core temperature is important to lower if it's too high. Again, wear a cap, proper protection. You shouldn't probably be overheating. But by not dunking yourself or solutioning yourself with lots of water, that will also reduce your risk of chafing. I've even had races where I've had to urinate myself because for a variety of other reasons, which I can explain at a later date. And it was actually the urine that was on my legs that ended up creating chafing, and I'd never had chafing before, and I was like, why afterwards? I was like, I only noticed at the end of the race. I was like, why is that sore? And I was like, oh, it's because that happened. So those are essentially the laws of chafing and how to avoid it. You should know this when you're training, and yeah, those are some of the things you can do to defend against that. I'm going to show you an example of a 50k race kit that I've used in the past, and I'm going to show you a race kit of a 100k example. So let's check those out. Race kit 50k. This here was the exact gear that I used for the UTA 50 in 2022 or 3, one of those ones. And so as you can see here, let's start left to right. So mandatory gear, we had to have 2 waterproof stuff sacks. So that was one of them, and then there was one inside it from memory. And we had to have mandatory long thermal pants, long thermal top. So I put those in there. As you can see, there's a couple of rubber bands around it just to keep it all tight so it can't move, so it can't change shape. That there is my rain jacket, tucked up in its own little self case, which is useful. This here was a mandatory gear high-vis vest that we had to wear for night running. Again, rolled it up, put it in one of those snap lock bags, put a couple of rubber bands around it so it's really just tight and compact. As you can see here, this here was thermal buff, and then those 2 that I had in my wrists. As you can see, little Patagonia running cap, you know, a little bit of warmth in the morning, and then, you know, vents for the afternoon when it got hotter was really useful. Running vest, you see whistle, okay, right there. If I need to use it, boom, it's right there, which is helpful and really helpful for training, and this pretty much lives on my vest, okay. This here's emergency blanket. Again, pulled it out of the packet, rolled it up real tight, put it in one of those snap lock bags so it doesn't get all ooky and yuck with sweat and stuff like that. Rubber band around it again. Headlamp, again, the time that I was targeting and when the start of the race was, I didn't think that I'd need it, so I just wrapped it up tight with some rubber bands and tucked it in my pack in a way that wouldn't irritate me. Snake bandage, that was mandatory gear on this run. This one here, that's spare batteries, and I can't remember what that might have been. That might have been you might need a little bit of health and safety stuff like some plasters or something like that. You needed a compass. So I had a compass with me, and that there is a tiny tube of sunblock if it got really sunny throughout the day. Obviously you need your race bib, shorts, t-shirt, trail snacks, right, there's a range of trail snacks there that I was using at that time for my fueling, and my shoes. So that's an example of race kit. And that was on my body, that was on my body. All of that was in my vest in the front of it. All of that was pretty much in the back of it. That was on my body, that was in the back of my vest, that was in the back of my vest, and that was in the back of my vest. So if you pack it tight and pack it good, you can fit a lot in these little vests. And keeping it tight, keeping it close to the center of your body is really useful when running ultra marathons. And race kit 100. Again, here's an example. This was from the Tarawera Ultra Trail in New Zealand. This was at the start of 2024. And as you can see, same vest. I had all the snacks already packed in here. I think gels and stuff were in here. Bottles were fueled, ready to go. Running, I think I used my UTA t-shirt
didn't race in it in the UTA race, but used it for this race after training in it for a while. It was a good shirt. Some toe socks, only 2 buffs, just lightweight ones for this race because it was more summertime. It wasn't like coming into it wasn't like autumn like Australian race was, and shoes. So the thing about in the back there, that was where my rain jacket was, tucked in the back. The thing about this is that you're probably like, oh, it's the same size. But in reality, you've got aid stations. So I work those out, and in other modules, I go through how to plan that and what to really focus on for fueling and the amounts and things like that, and calculating and working all that out, making a race plan, so that, yeah, you can go really light and go really far. So even between a 50K and 100K, it's pretty much the same gear, but you're just doing more cycles of it if you're going twice the distance. So all factors to consider, which you'll become super expert at in the Ultra Masterclass. In summary, come first, last, and always. It is the number one thing and tool in your disposal when going long and running ultra marathons. Train like you race. This includes training runs with mandatory gear. So don't be shy to load up, wear the vest, all the gear, all the things that you need, all the mandatory gear, figure out how to pack it, do a couple of training runs with that, so you iron out any kinks, niggles, jiggles, jingles, things that are annoying, little irritations prior to the event. Okay, it's about building resilience in your training so that you try and eliminate as many factors and variables as possible for your races. We can't always do all of them, so it's always about learning as you go. Train like you race. Exposure, a really fast way to mess up your race, cover up and stay hydrated. Number one killer of people out in the wild or in the environment is from exposure. So make sure you cover up with hats, with long gear, whether it's hot, whether it's cold, okay? Really focus on that and don't skimp on the gear that is mandatory. And even when you're training, because you never know, it might save your life or someone else's. If you found this super valuable so far and you are either watching this through the Ultra Masterclass or would like to become a part of the free community to level up and learn how to train and plan for your ultra marathon, you can go to school.com/skeletal freedom. There is an amazing community of over 400 people. Dive into the classroom tab, introduce yourself, make yourself familiar. There's prizes, there's all sorts of content getting uploaded in there daily to help you become a better ultra marathon runner so you don't DNF. If you haven't already, feel free to join the team on Strava at strava.com/clubs/skeletal freedom. Join the club. Kudos for all. I love seeing all the runs and experiments that people are running all around the world. Today's quote: the greats weren't great because at birth they could paint. The greats were great because they painted a lot. Macklemore, he has a song called 10,000 Hours. This is a quote that I've pulled out of that. And this is fundamental to ultra training, okay? If you are trail running and you're running ultra marathons, it's about doing the miles, but practicing, right? Okay? It's not called breaking, it's called training for a reason. We're learning to work with the adversity, the different things going on in our gear, in our body, in our fueling, in our running, in our training, and all of those factors that we are trying to grapple with and master and understand are all heading towards supporting us to become great at doing really hard things like ultra marathons, which are often some of our most amazing achievements on the planet. So I'm fired up and ready to go after reviewing all of this gear. I hope you are too, and I look forward to seeing you in the Skeletal Freedom Ultra Masterclass community.